of me. Run through the land, you run through my soul. Bring me wisdom and peace. Run through all ages and all of life's stages. You bring me around to find my release.
Hi, this is Jan Lewis. Welcome to be my guest today. We have from Sudbury, we have Neela Zoysa, and I said it right. She is a botanist, and boy does this girl know her plants. The importance of plants. I never really thought about it very much, but I read the article. Was it in one of the Sunday newspapers? There was a picture of you standing there. I wonder, where? Do you remember which newspaper it was?
I think it was in the
Was it the
over 50s?
50 plus.
Yeah,
I get them all. I'll go for
yes.
Worcester Business Journal, 50 plus, the Sunday newspapers. I find so many interesting people there. And so I saw Neela. I thought, we got to get her on. When did you decide to become a botanist?
You know, I've always loved plants, and I think maybe I was influenced by my father,
Yeah.
who loved gardening and loved growing fruit trees. And
So you grew up around that?
Yes, so, and of course I'm originally from Sri Lanka.
Sri Lanka.
So I was
Yeah.
born and raised on the equator. And of course we have, eternal summers there.
Yeah. Do you still go there for
Yes,
summer?
I go
You do.
very regularly, and I'll be leaving.
Oh, that's right. So
in
you'll
early
probably-
January for 2
When will
months.
you be coming back here?
In early March.
Early March. Now from Sudbury, I was telling you, I used to live there, and I've got memories, but now it's really grown up even more since when I was there.
Yes.
That's lovely. Route 20, there's a lot to see on that route, out that way. I think actually, if I would take Route 30 through Southborough and kept going straight, would that end me up? No, in Sudbury. I know Route 20 through Marlborough will, but Route 30, I don't know. Or 85, what is it, 30? Oh, well, anyway.
Yeah, Route 30 goes further south
It does.
from Framingham to Weston.
So, Neela, did you have to study it all to be a botanist, or did it came so easily learning from your dad?
No, I think that was my initial interest as a child. I was, loved gardening and helping him garden. And then when I was in college, I think I got my formal introduction to the natural world through, the usual route of very inspiring teachers and professors. And
What college did you go to?
so I went to college in Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
And then I worked in rainforests in Sri Lanka doing research for
In the
many years.
rainforest?
Yes, and then I did go to Oxford.
You went to Oxford? Is that in
Institute.
Britain, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And so got some training in forest management, and then I met my husband in Sri Lanka, and of course came to live here, and been working with different groups, first with the Harvard Herbaria and the Arnold Arboretum.
What's it called, Arbor? What's Arnold Arboretum?
Arboretum, it's out
Where
in
is that?
Jamaica Plain.
Jamaica Plain. There's one, Broadmeadow Brook. That's around here, isn't it? Broadmeadow?
Broadmoor Sanctuary is a Mass Audubon.
Mass Audubon. Okay.
Yes.
Do you ever go over there too?
Yes,
You do?
so we have a lot of nature conservation
Yeah.
organizations in this part of New England.
So it's not just about birds, Audubon. It's also about the plants, the
Yes,
botany.
yes.
Was it hard to study in college about it? It just came naturally.
I think it came naturally. I was always interested, and I found I had a bigger affinity to plants than to animals. But
Yeah.
but there's so much to learn. You kind of have to begin to.
Would you consider
focus.
trees part of botany? Because I
Yes.
love trees. Interest me. I'm not much of a gardener, but
Mhm.
I don't know. There's something about trees. Because as a little girl, we had a forest behind our house. I would just walk around, and you could actually listen to them. As they in the breeze.
So this was in Sudbury growing up?
No,
Or
no.
do you
I
have
grew
a-
up in Wilbraham, which is the western part of the state.
Mhm.
And we had a huge ranch up on a hill, and it was surrounded by, at that point, forest. It was gorgeous. And I can remember just loving the relaxation. It's relaxing for you to be out with the plants and all?
Yes, definitely.
What's
And
your favorite
I love,
plants?
I love sharing all that knowledge with other people.
You have a favorite?
That's a hard one. I think there's so many different plants during different seasons
Yeah.
that one could have a favorite plant for every month, I think. Depending on what's flowering. And
Do you ever deal with carnations at all?
I mostly teach about native plants
The
in New
plant,
England,
yeah.
or native plants in the tropics, but But I also like gardening, but I find gardening with native plants is so much easier
Yeah.
because it kind of takes care of itself. So
Did your father, did he do this as his profession or just because he loved it?
no, he loved it. It was his hobby.
He
was
loved doing
he was
that.
a dentist.
So that's where you picked up this talent. Now, she's brought some great books. Show us
Yes.
one of your books.
So
tell us
yeah,
about
so
it.
one of the things I'd love to share, because I teach for the certificate program in the Native Plant Trust, which used to be called the New England Wildflower Society.
What's the program called?
It's a certificate program.
Certificate, okay.
Yeah, that the Native Plant Trust has for field botany and native plant horticulture.
Yeah.
So I've been teaching there for about 10 years, and they have very well-known botanic gardens called Garden in the Woods in Framingham, if you have heard of it.
I
It's
don't know.
open.
What's it called again?
Garden in the Woods. And it's open from mid-April till end of October. It's very well known around
Where
the
in
country
Framingham?
for New England wildflowers. So I teach there for the certificate program, and I do some other work for them. So
Yeah. Where's it
Um,
located, the garden there?
yeah, so it's in Framingham.
Do you know the street?
Yeah, it's on Hemingway Street.
Hemingway, okay.
Yeah. And so I recommend, people
Yeah.
to go visit. And so they're kind of the authority for the local plants in this
Sure.
area in
Yeah.
New England for the 6 states. So I'd like to introduce people to this Wildflowers of
Let's
New
see this.
England.
Yeah, can we hold it up?
Yeah, which is a great,
The Wildflowers of New England, and it's a field guide, right?
Yes.
To all, oh,
so if people, like to walk in the woods during the warm months and identify what they see.
can they buy this in a bookstore? Or do they
yes.
borrow it from the library? Or what?
Yes, they can buy it, through Amazon or through the Native Plant Trust gift shop or many of the Mass Audubon, many places.
Look at all of them. If there was a test, would you know all these plants? You think you might? You might.
I'll
you know?
try, but that's the whole point in having a book is that, once you see a plant, if you can see it's all color coded.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
so you can, if you see a yellow flower, you could just turn to the yellow section, and it tells you on this little bar here how many petals, the different things that you would see in that flower.
Does
So
that
there's
blue-
a key
Let me
that
see.
helps you.
That helps you do it?
Yes,
Blue.
yes.
Okay, because we had, Mom called the bluets, these little tiny,
Yeah,
on our
and
lawn.
these are the bluets here, right here.
I thought, weren't they blue? No.
Yeah, they're like a pale mauve, sometimes
And these
almost
are
white.
white and yellow.
Yeah.
But they can be that color, too.
Yeah, so these are the bluets, little bluets they call
Wildflowers of New England. I wonder when this came out.
them. In 2016.
2006.
Yes.
So it's still pretty
Yes,
recent.
Yes.
Now,
It's
when
a
you
friend of
teach,
mine, Ted Elliman, who wrote it, he did a fabulous job.
do you recommend that when you teach your students, you do teach, right?
Yes.
That they read these books?
Yeah, so this is a field guide, so it's a kind of thing that you just take with you
Sure.
and use the key to look up the plant and flower and then try to identify it.
Now, is that a library book? It's the hidden life of
Yes.
trees.
So just to also give people an additional resource, so the wildflower, all the plants of New England also are in a website, in what we call a digital field guide called GoBotany.
GoBotany.
Yes, and it has almost 3,200 plants from New England. So for people who are interested and prefer to use the computer, then going to the GoBotany website on the Native Plant Trust.
GoBotany website, right on
Yes.
email.
Yes.
What's the one on trees? The hidden
So
life-
so this is a new book that's been a bestseller. It's actually a
Let me hold it up for you.
three-part series
Okay.
by a German forester, and I know it's been a runaway bestseller. A great holiday read. It talks about exactly that, the hidden life of trees, that
Yeah.
all the trees have these vast root systems that are connected.
What they feel and how they communicate.
Yes, they're all connected underground.
This comes from the Wellesley Free Library.
Yes,
So you borrowed that, so you
Yes.
can find things. I wonder if you could buy it in the store, too.
yes, definitely.
Funny how I mentioned I'm interested in trees, and she brings a book about it.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Do you find trees fascinating?
Yes, of course.
How do you tell the age of a tree?
Well, I know it's not the traditional way. Of course, is if you were a forester, what all elementary school children learn, when you cut a tree,
Yeah.
you can say from the growth rings, the different rings, all the seasons the tree has grown. But usually there are simple ways by which you could measure the girth of the tree,
Oh,
and then have some sense of for every inch.
that's how many years?
Yeah, how many years? So sometimes you could have a large maple or a oak that could be 200 years or 150
I can't go over and saw down the neighbor's tree,
Yes.
but I've always wondered, the thing is
Yes.
really old.
Yeah.
So just take a tape measure, right? And go around the bottom of the big old tree, and every
And different
inch.
trees have different measurements. So
Yeah.
one could go on the internet and see how to.
Okay, so
how
and then
you
you just
calculate it.
every inch means
Yes.
a year.
Yes. Or on a birch or a beech tree, they grow so slowly that for every season of growth where the leaf scars fall, there'll be a little outgrowth on the branches. So if you count them, you can tell that even a small beech tree could be 80 years old.
The one out front looks a lot like it's like 100 years old. It doesn't look like it's too healthy. It looks like it's dying. One good snowstorm, and we had that happen on the side of our yard. Oh, I heard this crash in the living room. And it fell kind of like on our neighbor's side. And I'm like, we got rid of those, but it's fascinating to me.
And that often happens when trees are left alone, because they're very social beings, because they're all connected underground, and the big mother trees are connected to the baby trees
Well, this one's all alone.
underground. So when you're that way, the tendency to crash down is much less, because they all support each other, feed each other.
Oh, so we're really in trouble at our house because this guy has nothing around it.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess we'll have to get the life jackets out.
Right.
How can people get you, Neela, if they have any? If you have any questions?
Well, since we're in Upton, I just wanted to mention also I work a lot with Sudbury Valley Trustees, which is a land trust, which is in the watershed of the Concord, Sudbury, and Assabet rivers, and Upton is kind of at the edge of the watershed of the different communities, and so there are some great trails here in Upton, the Sweet William Farm, and I know that your town just voted in November to acquire the Robertson property.
How did you find that out? That's wonderful.
Yeah, so I work, I do a lot of walks for Sudbury Valley Trustees, and I've been a member, and I've served on the advisory committee. So I, recommend people to look up their properties, and especially the ones in Upton and Grafton.
Have you been through our Upton State Forest?
Yes.
Pretty interesting, huh?
Yes. So I know that you guys just voted in November to acquire a property that connects the state forest to other lands.
I know Sweet William Farm.
Yes.
Now, what's the Whitney CACR?
So CR means a conservation restriction. So it's a joint property that's kind of adjoining each other. So that's kind of what Sudbury Valley Trustees does a lot. It helps the state and the town connect these properties, and it helps to manage these areas. So I'd love if your viewers from town here would.
Put one of those in the bulletin board downstairs.
Yes, I will certainly leave
both
this,
of them
and
if you
we
want.
can
It's great for people to be able to
yes.
see this. What's that big one there? Botany in a day.
Yeah.
How do you memorize all that? Wow.
Yeah, so for anyone who's interested in a simple book to learn about plants, I'd highly recommend this. It's a great book, that helps you look at different groups of plants and tells you how to identify them.
Let me see this, Neela. Oh, wow. An Herbal Field Guide to Plant Families of North America. Over 50,000 copies sold. Botany in a Day. The Patterns Method of Plant Identification. Now, what is it called now? Patterns. What's the patterns method?
Well, I know there's so many plants, it's difficult to remember every one of them singly and separately. So usually what we try to do is, if we see a rose anywhere in the world, we kind of know it's a rose because it has a recognizable flower.
Yeah.
So it is with other groups of plants too. If you see an oak somewhere, it may be a white oak, a red oak, or scarlet oak, but you kind of know it's an oak, and that means that there's a pattern to each group, and you learn to recognize them.
Yeah.
And that makes it so much easier because you don't have to be a walking encyclopedia that memorizes everything. Instead, you could just learn to recognize large groups of plants, and then you could use a field guide to be able to just zoom in on what that individual species is. If you were traveling to the west, or you're in Alaska, or you're out of the country, a wild rose, you'd still be able to recognize it. So that's kind of what the patterns method is.
Well, I know in Cape Cod, our family had a cottage there, and the most beautiful, they were called Cape Cod roses. They don't look just like the kind you would give to somebody on Valentine's Day, but they're wild, I think. They used to grow out wild behind the
That's what
cottage.
you call the dog
Gorgeous.
roses.
And they had thorns, though.
Yes.
Why would they have, that's the only, you had to be careful touching it.
Yeah. So I mean, even the cultivated roses do have thorns, but for the hothouse ones, they always get rid of the.
They smelled really good, those
Yes.
Cape Cod roses. As a kid, I thought, I'm still going to reach in and grab some and put them in the water. So that's what you mean by it. It could be part of the landscaping of where you're looking with what's common.
Yes.
Is the Cape Cod rose, I swear I've seen it out here in this area. Do you think it's
Yeah. So these are all wild roses, what we also call dog roses. So you have many different varieties, some which are grown, some which are
Yellow
natural.
roses are gorgeous. I love
Yes.
it. Oh, when I was my wedding, the girls and I we all carried like yellow roses, and it was very pretty. It really, I love yellow. They were all in yellow too. Again, how can they reach you, Neela?
I work with 3 or 4 different organizations, and mostly I teach at the Native Plant Trust and the Garden in the Woods, so they would be a great group to email, and just like you got in touch with me, Sudbury Valley Trustees, and my phone number is 617-371-8703, and my email address is Neela, like my first name, N like in Nancy, EELA, DEZ, the first 3 letters of my last name, at gmail.com. And
where do you teach?
So the Native Plant Trust at Garden in the Woods is where I do most of my teaching.
Is that in Sudbury Framingham?
So it's on the Sudbury Framingham line.
Do people have to sign up for your classes in botany?
Yes, so there's a catalog on the Native Plant Trust site, and then lately I've been also doing some teaching for the Lincoln Sudbury adult education, just teaching about open spaces.
The night classes?
Yes.
When did that start?
So we are going to have some dates on that catalog. So the spring catalogs are just being put together. So sometime in April and May, I'll be doing some indoor classes just to give people some overview of Sudbury open space, and then lead some guided walks, because we also have, in addition to Sudbury Valley Trustees and the Native Plant Trust, we also have the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Have a lot of almost 8,000 acres.
That's true.
In eastern Massachusetts. And we have 2 of them in Sudbury, so I will be leading walks to the 2 refuges. And
So the high school there, you'll be at the Lincoln Sudbury High School to teach night class. So you are there right now, right? Teaching a night course. Do people have to be interested in gardening if they just want to come? If they're just...
No, it's not about gardening. It's more about just enjoying the outdoors and learning about the wild plants and birds and animals.
Yeah, that's birds too.
Yes.
So when you go to the Audubon, so you've got 2 talents here, with the plants and the birds. You could blend it, right? When you teach, do you teach?
Well, you can't really separate them. If you're talking about plants, I don't know. Yeah, so I have one other book to show. So for instance, the pollinators.
Pollinators.
You can't really separate the plants from the animals. So they pollinate the flowers, they disperse the seeds, they use them for food. So they're just their lives are completely intertwined. So you can't really talk about plants without talking
wasps,
about the
flies, beetles.
yes.
What's the problem? You've heard of the Asian long-haired beetle.
Yes.
Those evidently are a real disaster for a tree. This is called pollinators of native plants. Attract, observe, and identify pollinators, like bees and things, and beneficial insects with native plants. So the bees and the pollinators, why do they care about the plant? What do they do for the plant?
Because we all love honey.
Yeah.
So the bees and many insects obviously use the nectar from the plants for their food, and in that process they move the pollen around, which is of course what helps the plants reproduce. And then the birds and other animals, including us, we eat the fruits, and then we spread the seeds.
Now, can people buy this? They can get this book at a store, any store, right?
Yes.
Neela, you must have a whole library of these at home. Do you really? Do you have like a whole? Do you have an office?
Yes, I have a lot of books.
Do you have things like cactuses? We've got a cactus that won't die. It's an indoor plant.
Yes.
Sometimes he looks kind of funny, and we water him. He looks like he perks up, but is that the best way to care for a cactus? Is just water in that pot?
I'm not a big indoor plant person because I love seeing them in their natural situation. So I'm assuming your cactus is from New Mexico or somewhere in the south from Arizona, and or maybe it's a completely indoor plant that comes from some other part of the world, from a desert situation.
What would you recommend, Neela, to high school students, middle students? If they wanted to go into botany and they wanted to go to college and study, what would you suggest to them? What kind of courses would you suggest?
If you were interested as a adult, of course, the places like the Native Plant Trust has their certificate course, and they have online courses which are called Plant 101, in Introduction to the Green World. We plant scientists like to joke that most people suffer what we call green blindness.
Yeah.
That means you look out and there's green stuff and you don't really, apart from knowing there's grass and there's trees and there's something in between, you don't really recognize anything in more detail. So that kind of program, that kind of online course I would recommend to get your basics down. Because it doesn't involve you having to go somewhere, because the online courses, you could do it from home. But if you were interested in going to college and taking a plant sciences course, so I would think that if you did a major in natural history, natural resources or biology, those would be kind of the situations where you would...
Biology and science.
Yeah, and natural resources,
What do you think of the climate change? Tell me, do you think that's, you're really into the lives of plants and all. What do you think?
It's for me, it's an issue of scale. There was a time, of course, this part of New England was completely barren and, farmed. But now the trees have come back. But now, again, there's a downward turn because the suburbs are spreading, and for the first time, all 6 New England states are losing forests. But the quality of forests are, of course, not the same as the ones that were cut down in the 1600s. So, so this kind of ebb and flow happens everywhere. That's part of, the human beings.
It's happening with the animals, too, because they're getting pushed. With all these McMansions, they're pushing them out. We've had a moose on the front lawn. We've had deer.
Yes.
Lots of bunny rabbits, obviously, but it's...
The bear.
Oh, where was the bear? Oh, the one in Upton.
Oh, you did have a bear.
There was I think he headed up your way towards Sudbury, Marlborough. I think they nailed him up there, but they didn't kill him. They just bring him and put him, but how do they get lost? That's what gets me, is a real bear gets lost up in here. We've been talking with Neela Zoysa, and she is a botanist, and the importance of plants, and we've got about 2 minutes left. Is there anything you'd like to say at the end?
Well, I think it's, I find it so interesting and almost meditative you have to slow down to be able to look at plants. And I'd recommend it to to everyone as a hobby, as something therapeutic, something to get outdoors. And
Are you
something
willing,
to
if,
share.
let's say if a high school saw you wanted to get in touch with you, would you be willing to come and give presentations to the kids? Who are
Yes, and more than even a presentation, I'd say, let's go out for a walk.
How about libraries, giving presentations
Yes,
there?
yes,
Have you been
definitely.
doing that at all?
I mostly teach, but I'm open to
Oh,
sharing it. But I'm an outdoor person, so
You're
maybe
out.
in good weather, I'd be happy to do a guided walk. Or there's plenty of walks already offered by Sudbury Valley
I
trustees
think
and
that's
other
really
groups.
cool.
And
Thank you, Neela, for
Yes.
being with us.
yes, thank you for having
Alrighty.
me.
And we'll see you next time and be my guest.
Riding on a shooting star,